King Charles hidden words on Islam that could shock the nation.
Islam can teach us today a way of understanding and living in the world which Christianity itself is the poorer for having lost.
This, then, is why the wisdom and learning offered by a sacred tradition like Islam matters. The Islamic world is the custodian of one of the greatest treasuries of accumulated wisdom and spiritual knowledge available to humanity. And yet, so often, that wisdom is now obscured by the dominant drive towards Western materialism. The modernist ideology that has dominated the Western outlook for a century implies that tradition is backward-looking. This is far from true. It looks forward. Think what could be achieved if mothers and fathers, the teachers in madrasas and imams, all sought to demonstrate to children how to translate Islamic teachings into practical action.
So let's take a listen to this Islamist himself, in his own words, stating why Muslims should go to non-Muslim lands and sending out a message to all of the Muslims who are currently in non-Muslim lands and telling them what their goal and their purpose actually is in that land. That would include America, Britain, Europe, Canada, right? Any land that is not Muslim land. This is the Muslims' goal in that land according to Muslims.
Why am I migrating here? Why am I in America? The Prophet ﷺ's companions left Mecca to go to a land that had no Muslims. We are in this country purely for the sake of Allah. The moment you make this intention, you will look at things different. People will meet you different. How could it be that your co-workers know you as a Muslim for 10 years, not once you presented Islam to them? You don't know why your purpose is here. All you guys together, we are in this country for Allah.
As we're here living in the US, what is our role now? What is the way forward? Let me just quote for you an ayah of the Quran, and I'm going to try to encapsulate it. Allah is saying, do not obey the disbelievers. Don't yield to them. And then He gives us the process of what to do next. وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. And so make jihad against them.
What is your duty as a member of the Ummah now that you are also an American? It is our physical jihad duty to fight the entire earth until we enter it into the Ummah.
Yeah, you heard that right. He literally used the word physical and then jihad. So nobody can say this is just a spiritual battle. No one can say this is an inner struggle when they use the word jihad, because they literally say physical jihad. It's crazy. It's crazy. But apparently we're living in a world where pointing that out is worse than doing it. Pointing out that that is what Islamists are claiming themselves is apparently bad.
On October 7th, Hamas launched the most deadly war on Jews since the Holocaust. They killed 1,200 innocent people. They took 250 hostages. 100 of them are still being held hostage. I know members of families of hostages who are still being held, American citizens. Hamas could end this war today by surrendering. They've chosen not to surrender. Instead, they spent billions of dollars building terror tunnels below civilian areas. It is not incumbent on the Israeli government to surrender just because terrorists are evil enough to hide behind civilians. The Israeli government has gone through such extraordinary efforts not to kill civilians that it has managed the best civilian to terrorist kill ratio in the history of urban warfare, and it is not close. I personally know soldiers who have gone door to door in the Gaza Strip who have risked their own lives to prevent civilian death. Israel has complete and utter air superiority over the Gaza Strip. Turns out that Hamas doesn't have an air force. They just had a series of tunnels where they hid all their leadership while their people suffered after their people voted for them, and then they effectively established a dictatorship over the course of the last 20 years. Israel, with their complete air superiority, certainly would have had the ability to commit full-scale human atrocities had they wanted to. They have complete air superiority. They could have used F-35s and simply turned the place into a parking lot. They did not, in fact, do that. They moved vast scales of population. In fact, believe it or not, there have been more births in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of this war than there have been deaths in the Gaza Strip from the war itself. That is a very poor way to conduct a genocide. Israel is being more meticulous in the conduct of this war than any army in human history, and certainly than the United States Army in its vast role in the history of urban combat. That is uncontested. What is Israel supposed to do? Simply say that you get to play tag, you take Israeli citizens, you kill 1,200 people, you hide behind a baby, you hide behind a civilian, and now Israel has to preemptively surrender? That is a great way to make sure that terrorists always win. What Israel has done ought to be celebrated by the Western world, because they've demonstrated that if terrorists decide to launch a war they cannot win, they will be eviscerated from the face of the earth as they ought to be.
I was in Toronto on Monday because Monday was Thanksgiving, and I was walking my dog, and I happened to come across this pro-Hamas celebration, this pro-Hamas rally. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever felt uncomfortable as a Canadian. The hate, the anger, the way they were marching, the chants they were making, that's something you see in the Islamic regime in Iran. You do not see that in Canada. That's the kind of behavior you see in radical fundamentalist countries, not in Canada. That is not the Canada that my parents immigrated to. That is not the Canada that we were raised in. That hate does not belong in Canada. You cannot negotiate with terrorists, Madam Speaker. You cannot. As someone who comes from a country that is ruled by Islamic regime terrorists, we know you cannot negotiate with them. They have no problem killing people. There's someone who's named Mossab Hassan Youssef, and I encourage everyone to look him up. Mossab Hassan Youssef is the son of a Hamas leader. He defected. He knows what happens on the inside, and he has some fascinating interviews. He's even wrote a book called Son of Hamas. And in that book, he writes, and in his interviews, he writes, Hamas does not care if you are Israeli or Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Bedouin. They do not care. They will execute everyone. They do not care about the people. They use Palestinians as human shields. And he said every few years, what the Palestinian Authority does, the Palestinian leadership, they will just create a war because they know what's going to happen is Israel will retaliate, and then the world will be outraged, and then they will get money through donations. That's what he says. This is someone who was born and raised in Hamas, and he defected.